The elite boxing gym Titan Gym has always been a place where the best of the best competed. Future champions trained here, young, fast, ambitious fighters dreaming of glory and victories. They gave it their all in the ring every day, trying to prove that they were the strongest. There was no room for weakness in this gym, and respect was earned here only through blood, sweat, and victories. Among all the fighters, Jake Holloway stood out, the 23-year-old champion of the club, who had no equal. Tall, muscular, with fast hands and incredible self-confidence, he believed himself invincible. Jake did not just win fights, he humiliated his opponents, demonstrating superiority, ridiculing their mistakes, and enjoying his status. He was the best, and he knew it. One morning, an elderly man in a simple tracksuit walked into the gym. No one paid any attention to him until he walked toward the boxing ring and began to watch the training. His calm, confident gaze followed every move of the fighters, as if assessing their skills. Jake noticed him almost immediately. He didn't like it when strangers just came into the Titan Gym, especially when this person looked like he was there by accident. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, leaving the ring, all sweaty after another sparring session. "Are you lost? This isn't a club for people of similar interests." Several of his friends laughed. "Maybe he wants to sign up for a self-defense course?" Someone chuckled. The old man seemed oblivious to the taunts. He continued to watch the fighters, as if studying them. "Or just come to watch the real fighters train?" Jake continued, stepping closer. He relished the moments when he could show his superiority, especially to those who weren't part of the gym's elite. The man turned his gaze to him, looked into his eyes, and smiled faintly. "Real fighters?" he repeated, as if tasting the words. His voice was deep, calm, but with some hidden power. It wasn't the voice of an ordinary old man. There was experience in it, confidence, and something else, something that made Jake pause for a second. "Yeah," Jake grinned, hiding his slight irritation. "See, these are champions training here, not old men." "Champions?" The man raised an eyebrow slightly. "You know, young man, there's one simple truth in boxing. Real champions are those who can take a punch." Jake chuckled, deciding that the man was simply philosophizing, like many old men who love to give advice. "Come on, old man, enlighten us," he said sarcastically. "You probably know all about boxing, huh?" The man nodded slowly. You could say yes. At that moment, one of the guys realized who was standing in front of them. "Damn," he whispered. "It's Sylvester Stallone." There was silence. Jake looked at the old man, his smile less confident. Of course, he knew who Stallone was. Everyone did. But he never thought he'd meet him here, in their hall. "You're kidding, right?" He tried to wave it off. "You're just an actor." Stallone grinned, but there was a sparkle in his eyes. "Maybe," he replied. "But I've trained with the best fighters long enough to know how the sport works." Some of the fighters who had previously laughed at the old man now looked at him with respect. But Jake was not going to back down. "Okay, since you know so much about boxing," he said, crossing his arms over his chest, "why don't we have a friendly sparring match?" There was a surprised murmur in the room. Someone whistled softly. Challenging Sylvester Stallone was unexpected. "Jake, are you serious?" one of his friends asked. "What?" He shrugged. "Just a light sparring. Grandpa himself said that real champions know how to take a punch." Stallone looked at him and nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "But not today. Let's do it in a week." "A week?" Jake chuckled. "You need time to get ready?" Stallone just smiled. "I'm sure it won't hurt you either." Jake took it as a challenge. He was sure that this old man was just trying to stall for time, but he agreed. "Okay, next week. I hope you don't change your mind," he said, giving her one last defiant look. Stallone turned towards the exit, throwing over his shoulder, "I never change my mind." When he left, the room exploded with discussion. "Are you really going to fight him?" asked one of Jake's friends. "Of course," he replied, shrugging his shoulders. "He's old. I'll put him down in a minute." But something inside him told him that things wouldn't be that simple. As the sparring session approached, word spread far beyond the confines of Titan Gym. It seemed like the entire town knew that Jake Holloway had challenged Sylvester Stallone, and that Stallone had accepted. Boxers, trainers, and even regular gym-goers were discussing the fight, placing bets and arguing whether the older actor could last even a few minutes against the younger champion. Jake, however, remained absolutely confident in his victory. For him, it was a mere formality, another opportunity to show his superiority and add another big name to his reputation. He knew that Stallone was in excellent physical shape for his age, but deep down he did not take him seriously. "He's almost 70, he told his friends during training. "Have you seen how he moves? Slow, tired, he'd be better off in a vitamin commercial than in the ring." Those around him eagerly agreed, but doubts began to appear more and more often in every conversation. "You know," one of the guys said hesitantly, "he trained with real champions. He worked with fighters who could destroy us in the ring." Jake just laughed. "It's all a show. Hollywood. They can make him look like Rocky, but it doesn't work in real life." But despite his bravado, he knew he had to prepare. His ego wouldn't allow him to lose in front of dozens of people, and given the amount of attention this fight was getting, losing would be a disaster. While Jake was training as usual, working on his speed, punches and defense, Sylvester Stallone was also busy. No one knew how he prepared, but one thing was clear: he was taking this fight seriously. Every morning he would start with a jog, just like in his heyday filming Rocky Dash. Then he would move on to strength training, forcing his body to remember what it was like to withstand the loads of professional fighters. He didn't just lift weights, he worked with punching bags, shadow boxing, and trained his reflexes, regaining his former speed and endurance. But most importantly, he remembered what it was like to take a hit dash. A few days before the fight, he met with his old friend and trainer Frankie, who once helped him prepare for Rocky Balboa Dash. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Frankie asked, watching Stallone stretch his shoulders before training. "Of course." Stallone grinned, clenching his fists. Frankie nodded and pulled out the bandages. "Then let's do it the old school way." They spent hours working on defense, ducking, footwork. Frankie would punch Stallone's body, getting him used to the punches, and then suddenly attack from above, testing his reactions. "You do realize he's going to try to knock you down right away, right?" Frankie said, handing him a bottle of water. Stallone took a sip, wiping his forehead. "Of course. But young guys make one mistake: they hit too hard and too early." Frankie chuckled. "You're still that sly son of a bitch." Meanwhile, Jake continued to train, but his confidence was still slightly shaken. He heard that Stallone was really serious about training, and although he didn't show any concern in front of his friends, a strange feeling was growing inside him. "Have you seen him train?" asked one of his friends. "That old man doesn't look weak." Jake waved his hand irritably. "Let him do what he wants. He'll fall anyway when I hit him." But deep down he knew this fight would be harder than he expected. He couldn't even explain why, but something told him there was something about this old man that he didn't understand yet. And now the day of the battle was already very close. The crowd had gathered at Titan Gym well before the sparring session began. The atmosphere in the room resembled that of a professional fight. Boxers, trainers, and even regulars filled the space, discussing the upcoming match. No one could believe that Jake Holloway, the young champion of the gym, would actually be fighting Sylvester Stallone. The only question was, how quickly would Jake send his elderly opponent to the mat? "I'll give him a minute, no more," smirked one of Jake's friends. "One good hit and he won't get up." "Did you see how he moves?" added another. "Slow as a turtle." Jake himself sat in the locker room, wrapping his hands and listening to his teammates' joke. Deep down, he felt a strange uneasiness, but he didn't allow himself to doubt. He was sure that his advantage was obvious: age, speed, physical fitness, everything was on his side. When he walked out into the hall, he was greeted by loud applause. He smiled and raised his hand, indicating that he was ready. Then his gaze stopped at the ring, where his opponent was already standing. Sylvester Stallone didn't look worried. He slowly stretched his shoulders, listening to the bustle around him. Unlike Jake, he didn't need loud support. His gaze showed the confidence of a man who had already gone through real trials and knew that the main thing in a fight is not age or strength, but resilience and the ability to take a punch. The referee called them to the center of the ring. "Keep the fight clean, no dirty tricks," he said, looking at both of them carefully. Jake looked down at Stallone, smirking contemptuously. "I hope you have a good doctor, old man," he said, crossing his arms. Stallone looked at him with a slight grin. "I hope you have a good battle plan, boy." The referee gave the signal and the fight began. Jake immediately went on the attack. He expected Stallone to defend himself, to retreat, but everything happened differently than he expected. The old man did not run, did not take a defensive position. He remained motionless, watching every move of the young fighter. Jake threw the first punch, a left hook. But at the last moment, Stallone ducked, leaning back slightly, and Jake's fist missed his face by a millimeter. The audience gasped. Jake tried again, a series of quick punches that had knocked out many of his opponents before. But Stallone dodged deftly, as if he had anticipated every move. A minute passed, then another. Jake began to get angry. This should have been an easy fight, but something had gone wrong. "Are you just going to dodge, old man?" he barked, striking again. But instead of answering, Stallone suddenly stepped forward and threw a punch to the body, a short, hard blow, right under the ribs. Jake felt his breath hitch. He hadn't expected that. The audience was noisy. "Damn, he can really hit." Jake stepped back, recovering. He knew now that he had been wrong. This man was no mere actor. He knew how to fight. Stallone straightened up, continuing to move around the ring with the cool of a professional. "You're in too much of a hurry," he said calmly. "Young fighters always want to finish the fight as quickly as possible. That's their biggest mistake." Jake gritted his teeth. "Keep your advice to yourself." He went on the attack again, but now with much more caution. He tried to break through Stallone's defense, but Stallone worked smartly in the block, closing the distance, forcing Jake to make mistakes. There was a tense silence in the hall. No one expected such a turn of events. The young champion, who should have won easily, suddenly found himself in a difficult situation. The third minute passed, then the fourth. Jake began to gasp for breath. He moved more and more slowly, his blows losing power. "What's wrong with him?" someone from the audience whispered. "He's tired." Stallone, on the other hand, was breathing evenly. He moved smoothly, controlling the pace of the fight. "And now," he said quietly, taking a step forward, "it's my turn." And with these words he went on the attack. Jake felt like his legs were lead. His breathing was ragged, his muscles were burning with fatigue, and the punches he had thrown with such ease earlier in the fight were now slow and inaccurate. He tried to hide it, but Stallone saw everything. Unlike the younger champion, he moved smoothly and effortlessly. Every move was calculated, every dodge perfect. He knew that time was on his side. Jake had spent too much energy trying to overwhelm his opponent in the first minutes, and now he was paying for his overconfidence. The crowd in the hall was no longer as loud as before. At first, everyone expected a quick knockout, but now they looked at the ring with surprise and respect. Stallone did not just hold on, he controlled the fight. "Come on, Jake!" one of the young fighter's friends shouted. "Get a grip, you can't lose!" But Jake knew he could. In his peripheral vision, he saw the expressions on the faces of his friends, his coaches, and even random spectators. Some looked on with alarm, others with growing admiration for Stallone. Jake knew he had to do something. He took a deep breath, gathered all his remaining strength, and went for broke. His right hand shot into the air, aimed straight at Stallone's face. It was a powerful punch, designed to knock his opponent off his feet. But just before contact, Stallone twisted to the side and, before Jake could react, landed a short, clean shot to the body. The blow was sharp, like a hammer blow. The air rushed out of Jake's lungs and he felt his legs buckle. He took a step back, but the ring felt too small and his body felt too heavy. What the hell? He muttered, holding his side. Stallone didn't give him time to recover. He continued the attack, short, hard punches to the body, deft dodges, and again a quick uppercut that broke through Jake's guard. The hall exploded with shouts. He's destroying it. Did you see that movement? Damn, that old man moves like a machine. Jake tried to brace himself, but every blow he threw missed. He knew he was trapped, but there was nothing he could do. Young fighters always make one mistake, Stallone said calmly, stepping aside to give Jake a second before landing the final blow. They want to win quickly. They hit with all their might, but they don't think about what's going to happen next. Jake growled and lunged forward, but the next moment he felt a powerful right hook land squarely on his chin. Everything swam before his eyes. He didn't fall right away, but the world around him became blurry. He swayed. The audience held its breath. Second. 2. And Jake collapsed to the floor of the ring. The hall exploded. This is impossible. He put him down. He didn't just win. He destroyed it. Stallone looked down at his fallen opponent and slowly stepped back, allowing the referee to begin the count. 1, 2, 3. Jake didn't move. 4, 5, 6. He tried to get up, but his body wouldn't obey. 7, 8. He heard voices, but they sounded as if they were coming from far away. 9. One last attempt to get up, but my legs give way again. 10. Knockout. The audience burst into applause. Stallone won. Jake lay in the ring, his breathing heavy and his head pounding. He could hear the crowd's stunned cheers, their tone changing from mocking to ecstatic. It all seemed to happen in slow motion. The referee raised Stallone's hand, declaring him the winner. The crowd rose from their seats, and somewhere in the background, trainers and boxers talked among themselves, not believing what had just happened. Jake tried to sit up, but his body wouldn't obey. His chest was still resonating from the last blow, and he felt like he would need time to recover. At that moment, a hand appeared above him. He looked up and saw Stallone holding out his hand. There was no mockery in his eyes, no desire to humiliate. Only calm and understanding. "Get up, boy," he said. Jake closed his eyes for a second, then slowly took the hand and, gritting his teeth, rose to his feet. A tense silence fell over the room. Everyone waited for him to speak. He looked at Sylvester. Everything he had thought about him before, all the jokes he had made about him, all of it now seemed stupid and useless. He had lost. Not just physically, he had lost psychologically. His arrogance had played a cruel joke on him. You're not just an actor," he breathed out, still clutching his ribs. Stallone chuckled. "You're not just an impudent kid," he replied. The crowd burst into laughter, but it wasn't the same laughter Jake had heard before the fight. It was the laughter of recognition, of respect. He nodded, trying to process what had just happened. Jake's trainer approached the ring. He looked at his student with slight disappointment, but then turned his gaze to Stallone and extended his hand. "That was a damn impressive fight," he admitted. "I'm always happy to have a good sparring session," Stallone replied calmly, shaking his hand. Jake sighed, looking at the floor, then looked at his opponent. "I underestimated you," he said, and it was perhaps the hardest word he had ever spoken. "I thought you were just an old man trying to show off." Stallone nodded. "And I thought you were just a smug kid," he replied. "We were both wrong." Jake smiled. For the first time in a long time he wasn't trying to be tough. He nodded, accepting the lesson. "I understood a lot," he said. "Maybe we can repeat it sometime?" Stallone laughed. "If I live that long." He winked. The crowd laughed again, but now even Jake smiled. He realized that losing was not the end, but an opportunity to learn. The room erupted in applause. Even those who had bet against Stallone now looked at him with admiration. He had not only proven that he could still fight. He had proven that a true champion is not the one who is younger or stronger, but the one who can think, take a punch, and never give up. As he was leaving the ring, one of the young fighters asked, "What is the most important thing in boxing?" Stallone paused for a second, looked at him, and said, "The ability to get up after every fall." And with these words he left the hall, leaving behind not just a memory of victory, but also a lesson that no one present would ever forget.